Hey, my lovely people, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Nyayenga Peace, and I like to call myself Coach. And Coach in Luo just means peace. This is my very first video. I'm excited. And I would like to have a chat with you guys. And it's going. I'd like to chat about something that is very near and dear to me. It is something that I experienced while growing up. But for so long, I really didn't know that it had a name to it. And I'm also doing it because if I can reach out, sensitize somebody, educate somebody about it so they could help the young ones, so be it. So, my dear friends, let's have a chat about colorism. What is colorism? And why am I talking about colorism today? And why is it so important to have this conversation? Well, in many times when I hear the word colorism, my mind rushes directly to the word racism. However, I view racism at the macro level and colorism at a micro level. Racism usually happens among discrimination and prejudice among people of different races. For example, maybe the whites against the blacks or the Asians, and yeah, it's not nice. It's a very nasty thing. And many times when racism happens, for example, in the US, in the Western world, especially among the black people, we Africans are we are very fast at jumping up and condemning it. And of course, rightfully so, racism isn't a thing that anybody should tolerate or accept. However, it also draws my mind to what happens to us in Africa. I will majorly discuss this based on my experience, especially growing up in Uganda. So, some of the things I might say here might be very subjective, and I'm not an expert in this, but I'm just trying to share my experience in regards to colorism. So when we jump up and talk about racism and all those things, of course, rightfully so, but we also have something that is very similar that happens to us every now and then. Colorism. This is something that is very common in Africa, in Uganda, where I grew up. So what is colorism? Colorism is majorly prejudice and discrimination against other people. First of all, this is discrimination and prejudice to people of the same race against each other because of their different shades of dark, the different skin tones. For example, among the Africans, we are very diverse. We come in all shapes and sizes. We have a diverse culture. We have a diverse behaviors and all those things. Even the kind of foods we eat is very diverse. And I think that is okay. And that is very beautiful. And also our skin tone. We're also very diverse. We come in different shades. There are those who are very dark. There are those who are brown. And there are those who are very light. However, when it comes to colorism, in most cases, the discrimination or the prejudice tends to favor people of a lighter skin against those of a dark skin. They tend to think that, when you're light-skinned, you're more beautiful, you're more intelligent, you got it together, or you're better off. Also, sometimes when it comes to some jobs, you will find that in most cases, they tend to favor those with a lighter skin, So you find a darker person is missing out on a job just because they are darker. And I think that is not okay. Jobs should be based on merit, should be based on your qualification, on your skills, what you can do, and not based on discrimination and prejudice. However, in discussing the topic of colorism, there's one thing I must point out, that most people, everybody, all the different shades experience colorism. However, the biggest percentage is directed towards the darker skin. I'll give an example of people of light skinned. Sometimes somebody will come to you and say, oh, you're too light to be African. What is that? Throwing trauma words around. That is very damaging to a person of a light skin. So what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say is we should not let colorism get in the way of us. We should embrace each other, embrace all colors, and love one another. So when we discuss colorism, sometimes I've sat down and wondered, where does colorism come from and all these things, And then in reading books, I suddenly realized when you read about slavery, in the times of slavery, the colonial masters used colorism against their slaves. If you were a slave of a lighter shade, you had more privileges, you were more favored, it was likely that you would be treated much better over the darker mates of yours. And what does that do? It breeds hatred. It breeds friction among people. And then also, even when slavery ended, for example, in the US, even when slavery ended, the black people, they took over that code of colorism and started using it against one another, segregating one another based on the shades of their color. For example, in some clubs in the US, they had this paper test. It was a brown paper. So if you wanted to access this, they put this paper next to your face. I don't understand when they say black is not beautiful. We are all beautiful. All shades are beautiful. Sorry, I got a little bit carried away there. So they put this paper on you. If you are the same color as this paper or a little lighter, then you were allowed to come in. And if you weren't, then you are not allowed to come in, And then also during the time of colonialism, when the whites came to Africa, they used colorism also against us. They used it to separate us. They used it to segregate us. They used it to pin us against each other. A good example is in Rwanda. In Rwanda, when the Germans arrived, they favored the Tutsi. The Tutsi were more light-skinned. So the Tutsis were the ones who were given the positions of authority, against the Hutus. So with time, when the Hutus eventually got power, it kind of turned into some kind of revenge, because there was no love. They didn't feel like we were one people, because the Tutsis have always felt we were more superior than this other group. So you can see how also the colonialists use this against us. And that is not only in Rwanda, they use that in many other parts of Africa. So it's kind of like they planted this seed of what? Of colorism, and then we continued with it. And then also colorism is also influenced by the media. Yeah, colorism is also influenced by the media, because, for example, many times in magazines, if sometimes in magazines you'll find that if they're portraying a child in poverty, a child that is hungry, a child that is not doing well, in most times you'll find it will be a picture of a dark-skinned child. And then when you open inside a happy child that is doing well off and all that, it's a light-skinned child. So what does this say? It kind of creates a negative connotation to dark-skinned, like all the bad things, all things that are not doing well is the dark skin, and you know, and that doesn't sit well, especially with our children. When our children are growing up, you look at such things, they already start to influencing you. You think, okay, when you're light-skinned, you have it better. If you're not light-skinned, then you don't have it so good. Sorry, I was about to say something in Danish there. Yeah, and also, yeah, I'm still talking about the media. Also the beauty products. You know, in most of the beauty products, of course, we have so many beauty products tailored for Africans, but also still most of the beauty products, the L'Oreal and all these things, you find that they're mostly geared for the white people or the Europeans and all that, people of lighter skin. So, and then the few that are geared for us, the black people, you find that in the adverts, they will put a woman who is dark, and then after using their products, the woman turns lighter. What kind of message does that send? You know, it's like, okay, when you're in a darker shade, it's not good enough. You must do something to make yourself look better, you know. So you can see the tricks the media also plays on us. In discussing this, I want to say I have nothing against people who bleach, people who lightened up, as long as they do it for the right reason and they are happy. The reason why I discuss this colorism is because in most cases, there are some people who are pushed to do these things. They don't do it because they like it, but now people are being pushed to do this. They are being brainwashed because they're like, okay, if I must get this job, I must look a certain way. I have to start bleaching, you know? And yet there's so many dangers to bleaching, you know, because there is a site that shows that so many women, actually this is very sad. When I talk about it, it's very sad. So many women on the African continent, they use a lot of bleaching creams, and most of these creams have very dangerous, harsh chemicals in them that cause skin cancer, cause a lot of different skin problems. And then for breastfeeding mothers who have bleached so much, you find that it even dries out their milk duct, so it can't produce enough milk for the babies. And I think that is very sad, you know. So we should love one another. We should not discriminate against each other based on our skin color, because it's more like we do these things and there's a group of people who are sitting over there and just laughing at us because they benefit from our hatred, they benefit from our segregation, they benefit from our discrimination against each other. They are just sitting there manufacturing and producing these products and like, look, yeah, let's get them this money. Because they say at the end of the day, all this, the bleaching industry is such a big billion-dollar industry. We could use that money for something else. Let's learn to love one another and love each other just the way we are. So what's the impact of this colorism? Colorism narrows our beauty standards. Instead of looking at brown, black, yellow, and all this as all equally beautiful, instead of celebrating everyone, we narrow our beauty standards to one color and think, oh, this is better, or that is that is not good, you know. So let's appreciate everyone. Let's not narrow our beauty standards, you know. And also this colorism, for some people, it kills their self-esteem. For example, when I was growing up, I come from a region where majority of the people are very dark. When I was growing up, I remember I was bullied for being dark, and also from where I come from. In Uganda, they would call me Emudokoro, Emukoko, which basically translates to like, I was an animal, not good enough. And so imagine, as a small girl, as a young girl who is just growing, what that does to you. And for so many years, I didn't feel beautiful. I didn't feel good enough, you know. And I must confess, at some point in my teenage years, you know, I even started to bleach also and started to lighten up. Not because I really wanted it, but it is because you want to fit in search of, I want to fit in. You think, okay, if I do this, I'll also look better. I'll be more accepted and I'll be that. And that is very sad. Let's not do that to each other, you know. And then also, I remember I have a cousin who is extremely very, very dark. Every time he came to class, the kids, actually these are not even kids, this is in secondary, they would be making jokes. I won't mention his name. They would be like, oh, when God created darkness and John appeared, you know, and I would sit and look at his face. You could see sadness, but he would just try to pretend and rub it off and say, okay, I'm okay, and try to own it up and also try to crack a joke about it. But you could really see it was sad. He was sad and inside him, he wasn't okay. And then also, I'll give another example because I'm trying to show, although the majority of colorism, the discrimination, segregation is directed at Black people as not good enough and all that, it also happens to people of light shade. For example, I had a friend, she was really beautiful girl, but very light. So sometimes when we were going for sports, and she would be approaching to also come and climb the school track, and then you could hear this mumbling, I smell somebody who is like, I smell a white person coming around here. And then other people would say, you're too light to be African and all that. So this is an African, you're telling the person she is too light to be an African. What do you think that does to them? What do you think when they live there and go to bed, how do they feel? That's not a compliment. That is damaging, you know. So let's try to educate each other. Let's have these difficult conversations, you know, because colorism is deep, you know. It affects, as I said, it narrows our beauty standards. It affects people emotionally, psychologically, yeah, and all that. You know, let's have these difficult conversations. Now we have a name to it. Let's try to educate our children about it, you know. And I'm a mother. I have 4 children. So how have I tried to educate them about colorism? How have to try and prevent it? You know, of course, there will always be people from the outside who might target them and say a thing or two. But as a parent, as a mother, as the grown-ups, it's our responsibility to try and teach our children and shield them. So what are some of the things I do is I do affirmations where I tell them how beautiful they are, the way they are, and we talk about different people. You know, when I buy dolls that are different colors, white, black, brown, and all that, like a representation of what the world is. We come in different colors, so everybody is beautiful just the way they are, because I want them to try and appreciate that. And then also when I buy books, we try to buy books that have different characters in them. And then also, I'm very intentional with books. I'm very intentional with also movies. I try to show movies that have Black superheroes in them also, so that they can grow up and know that, okay, a white person, a European, or whatever it is, they can grow up, be superheroes. So can the Black person too. All of us can have the same, can become whatever we want to become, you know, because in most cases in the media, in movies, it's always the Black person who is portrayed as a villain, and I don't think that is very nice. It also reminds me of the Bible and all the preaching when I was growing up. Jesus, God, and angels and everything were all portrayed as white, and that always confused me. It left me always wondering, where do I fit in? So when I die, when I live here, where do I go? Pictures don't seem to show a representation of me. So that also goes to show the importance of representation in the media, everywhere, you know. So colorism, it's something we must tackle. It's a difficult conversation we must try to have. And also the other important thing when it comes to colorism, we must identify these trauma words. Sometimes we say things to each other and you think it's a compliment, but sometimes it's not a compliment. For example, when you say to a lighter skinned person, you're too light to be an African, that's a trauma word. And then when you say to another person, oh, your skin is fairer, what do you mean fairer? If her skin is fairer, so what is my skin? Does that mean because fairer is her skin better than mine, or what? You know? So there are all these other small words we say to each other that we must be careful about and not create all the negative connotation around it. Actually, colorism also, apart from among the Black communities, also in Asia, it is very prevalent. And in India, for example, because of that, it has led to caste systems or classes, the first class, the second class, and the lower class. So you find the top class are the very light, the second in between, and the lower caste are the very dark, you know. So it's like there's always a negative connotation when it comes to us, the more darker people. So let's educate each other, you know. Let's not discriminate each other. Let's not push each other to do things that are harmful to us, you know. So the other thing I want to say, so the other thing I want to say is let's not ignore color. Let's have these difficult conversations with each other and with our children. Yes, I've already said, let's educate each other. Live your life in color, you know. Light skin is light, it is not favorable. Dark skin is dark, that doesn't mean it is unfavorable, you know. Black is black in all of its shades and textures, and it's all beautiful. It's time we abandon all these hateful colorism things, you know. So guys, thank you so much for listening to me discuss this topic of colorism. I am excited and looking forward to hearing your feedback about colorism. Have you experienced colorism? How did you overcome colorism? You know, I'd really like to hear about this. Let's acknowledge that colorism exists, you know. Let's have this difficult conversation. Let's believe others when they tell us they've experienced colorism, because colorism is really deep, you know. Sometimes it affects people's jobs, it affects people's livelihoods, it creates trauma, it creates all that. Thank you guys so much for listening. And thank you so much for watching. I love you guys so much. Please remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel. This is my first video. We will continue having a chat, and if there's a topic you'd like us to chat about, please comment and leave it below in the comment section. Otherwise, thank you so much. Bye.